Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and remember, Context is Everything Media Network. Founder and CEO John Michael is reading a history textbook cover to cover in order to build my historical context so that in the future I can know the past. In the spirit of context being everything, I'm going to do a brief review of Friday's reading. Since I'm reading this textbook cover to cover, the section from Friday will provide context for the section today so that we know the surrounding information around today's reading. Here's a synopsis of Friday's reading on the Renaissance, which started in Italy. This is Friday's review. The Renaissance was a period of cultural rebirth and change that began in Italy in the 14th century. Italy, with its rich history of ancient Roman culture, was the perfect environment for a cultural awakening. The Renaissance was marked by a renewed interest in classical learning, a focus on individual achievement, and a spirit of adventure that led to the exploration of the New World. Humanism, an intellectual movement that focused on worldly subjects and the study of classical culture, was the heart of the Renaissance. Wealthy patrons played a major role in the artistic flowering of the era. The Medici family in Florence, among the richest merchants and bankers of Europe, exerted significant political and economic leadership and supported the arts generously. That's what a patron is. A patron is a financial backer for an artist. Florence came to symbolize the energy of brilliance in the Renaissance, producing a dazzling number of gifted poets, artists, architects, scholars, and scientists in a short span of time. Renaissance art reflected humanist concerns and portrayed religious figures against classical backgrounds, so like that have Jesus in ancient Rome. Well, that kind of lines up. Jesus in ancient Greece, which doesn't line up. The Renaissance transformed the way people viewed themselves and their world and laid the foundation for the modern era. Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael were the three most celebrated Florentine masters of Renaissance art. Leonardo da Vinci was a versatile artist with a genius for invention. His interests extended to many fields, including botany, anatomy, optics, music, architecture, and engineering. He is known for his paintings such as the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper, and his sketches of flying machines and undersea boats, which is pretty bizarre because submarines and planes didn't exist, but he had some what appear to be pretty thoughtful and well-designed, schematics for flying and submersible devices. He's known for his... Michelangelo was a sculptor, engineer, painter, architect, and poet. He is known for his masterpieces like the Pietà, the Statue of David, and the Sistine Chapel ceiling, which depicted history of the world through biblical stories, creation to the flood. He also designed the dome at St. Peter's Cathedral in Rome. Raphael, younger than the other two, blended Christian and classical styles in his paintings. He is known for his tender, imaginary gathering of great thinkers and scientists, which he included Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and himself in, as well as Socrates, and Aristotle, and Plato as well. Renaissance, and that's like in a Greek or Roman library. So that is the example of blending classical things with, like, mismatching figures, Renaissance literature saw a rise in how-to books, such as the Book of the Courtier by Baldassare Castiglione, which describes the manners, skills, learning, and virtues that a member of the court should have. Castiglione's ideal court was a well-educated, well-mannered aristocrat who mastered many fields. Niccolò Machiavelli, on the other hand, wrote The Prince, a guide for rulers on how to gain and maintain power. Unlike earlier political writers, Machiavelli did not discuss leadership in terms of high ideals. Instead, The Prince looked at real rulers in the age of ruthless power politics and stressed that ends justify the means. So he was saying, like, you should lie as a politician rather than follow through with your promises, because by the numbers, those who lie get more done. And that is probably true, but it's also probably not good for the preservement of a free and just society. The Renaissance moves north. Section 2. The Renaissance moves north. So now I'm going to read out of a textbook. And that's it. Thank you for listening. And here it goes. This is going to be about 20 minutes. The Renaissance moves north. Setting the scene. Had I not torn myself from Rome, I could never have resolved to leave, wrote Dutch priest Desiderius Erasmus. There one enjoys sweet liberty, rich libraries, the charming friendship of writers and scholars, and the sight of antique monuments. Inspired by his visits to Italy, Erasmus helped spread the Renaissance to northern Europe. Unlike Italy, northern Europe recovered slowly from the ravages of the Black Death. Only after 1450 did the North enjoy the economic growth that had earlier supported the Renaissance in Italy. Artists in Northern Renaissance. Heading. Artists of the Northern Renaissance. The Northern Renaissance began in the prosperous cities of Flanders, a region that included parts of present-day northern France, Belgium, and the Netherlands. Spain, France, and Germany, and England enjoyed their great cultural rebirth 100 years later, in the 1500s. A German Leonardo. Subheading. Albrecht Dürer traveled to Italy in 1494 to study techniques of the Italian masters. Returning home, he employed these methods in paintings and especially in engravings. In this form of art, an artist etches and design on a metal plate with acid. The artist then uses the plate to make prints. Many of Dürer's engravings portray the religious upheaval of his age. Though his art as well as his essays, Dürer helped to spread Italian Renaissance ideas in his homeland. Because of his wide-ranging interests, which extended far beyond art, he is sometimes called the German Leonardo. Flemish painters. Subheading. Flemish painters. Among the many artists of Flanders in the 1400s, Jan and Hubert van Eyck stand out. Jan and Hubert van Eyck stand out. Their portrayals of townspeople as well as religious scenes bound in rich, realistic details. The Van Eyck also developed oil paint. Northern artists used this new medium to produce strong colors and hard surfaces that could survive the centuries. In the 1500s, Pieter Bruegel used vibrant colors to portray lively scenes of peasant life. Bruegel's work influenced later Flemish artists who painted scenes of daily life rather than religious classical themes. In the 1600s, Peter Paul Rubens blended the realistic tradition of the Flemish painters like Bruegel with the classical themes and artistic freedom of the Italian Renaissance. Many of the enormous paintings portray pagan figures from the classical past. New heading: Northern Humanists. Northern Humanists. Like Italian humanists, Northern European humanist scholars stressed education and classical learning. At the same time, they emphasized religious themes. They believed that the revival of ancient learning should be used to bring about religious and moral freedom. Erasmus, subheading under Northern Humanists. Erasmus. The great Dutch priest and humanist Desiderius Erasmus used his knowledge of the classical language to produce a new Greek edition of the New Testament. He also called for a translation of the Bible into the vernacular, or everyday language, of ordinary people. He scorned those who are unwilling that Holy Scripture translated into the vernacular and be read by the uneducated. He scorned those folks who said that the uneducated shouldn't be able to read the Bible. He scorned them. That means he didn't like them. He thought that they were wrong. He thought that the common folk should be able to read the Bible. He scorned them. As if the strength of Christian religion consisted of the ignorance of it all. To Erasmus, the individual's chief duties were to be open-minded, of goodwill toward others. As a priest, he was disturbed by corruption in the church and called for reform. In the praise of folly, Erasmus used humor to expose the ignorant and immoral behaviors of many people of his day, including the clergy. Erasmus's friend, the English humanist Thomas More, also pressed for social reform. In Utopia, More describes an ideal society in which men and women live in peace and harmony. No one is idle, all are educated, and justice is used to end crime rather than to eliminate the criminal. Today, the word utopian has come to describe any ideal society. Is that where the word utopia comes from? Did he make that word up? Thomas More? St. Thomas More? They don't mention that he's a saint. Is it the same Thomas More? I don't know. Writers for the new audience. New heading. Writers for the new audience. Scholars like More and Erasmus wrote mostly in Latin. In northern towns and cities, and growing middle class demanded new works in their vernacular. This audience particularly enjoyed dramatic tales and earthy comedies. François Rabelais. The French humanist François Rabelais had a varied career as a monk, physician, Greek scholar, and author. In Gargantua and Pantagruel, he chronicles the adventures of two gentle giants. On the surface, the novel is a comic tale of travel and war, but Rabelais uses the characters to offer opinions on religion, education, and other serious subjects. Shakespeare. The towering figure of Renaissance literature was the English poet and playwright William Shakespeare. Between 1590 and 1613, he wrote 37 plays that are still performed around the world. Shakespeare's comedies, such as Twelfth Night, laugh at the follies of young people in love. His history plays, such as Richard III, chronicle the power struggle of English kings. His tragedies show people crushed by powerful forces on their own weakness. In Romeo and Juliet, two teenagers fall victim to an old family feud, and in Macbeth, an ambitious couple commit murder to gain political power, only to sink into madness and guilt. Shakespeare's love of words vastly enriched the English language. More than 1,700 words appeared for the first time in his works, including bedroom, lonely, generous, gloomy, heartsick, hurry, and sneak. Let me read those words in English. Bedroom, lonely, generous, gloomy, heartsick, hurry, and sneak. Cervantes. The Renaissance in Spain in the early 1600s produced its own great works. Best known is Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes, an entertaining tale that mocks romantic notions of medieval chivalry. The novel follows the adventures of Don Quixote, a foolish but idealistic knight, and his faithful servant, Sancho Panza. Oh yeah. The Printing Revolution. Printing press. In 1456, Johann Gutenberg of Mainz, Germany, printed a complete edition of the Bible using movable metal type on a machine called a printing press. It was the start of a printing revolution that would transform Europe. On the heels of Gutenberg's success, printing presses sprang up across Europe. By 1500, they had turned out more than 20 million volumes. Gutenberg built on the earlier advances. Methods of making paper had reached Europe from China about 1300. The Chinese and Koreans had been using movable metal type for centuries, although Europeans may have developed their technology independently. The printing revolution brought immense change. Printed books were cheaper and easier to produce than hand-copied works. With books more readily available, more people learned to read. Readers gained access to broad ranges of knowledge, and from medicine to law to astrology to mining. Printing books exposed educated Europeans to new ideas, greatly expanding their horizons. As you will read, the new presses would contribute to the religious turmoil that engulfed Europe in the 1500s. I hope you have a wonderful day. Tomorrow I will do a review of what I just read, which will take about 6 minutes, and then I will read the next section, The Protestant Reformation. I hope you have a wonderful day and enjoy the weather. Bye-bye.